The scent of her perfume hit me first, sweet, expensive, and far too strong for a casual night out. Then, the sharp click of her heels echoed through the living room as she strutted toward the door. She paused, glancing at her reflection in the hallway mirror, tilting her head slightly as if she were admiring a masterpiece. That's when she turned to me, her lips curling into a smirk. "I'm going on a date. Try not to be too jealous." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I stared at her, searching for some sign that this was a joke, a twisted attempt at humor. But she wasn't laughing. There was no hesitation, no nervousness, just pure confidence, like she had already convinced herself that this was normal, that I should accept it. A cold, heavy weight settled in my chest, pressing down with a force I couldn't shake. I had been married to this woman for 7 years. I had loved her, sacrificed for her, built a future with her. And now, in the blink of an eye, it felt like none of it had ever mattered. She reached for the door handle, not even waiting for a response. That's when I finally spoke. "Wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. The air between us felt thick, suffocating. My mind raced, trying to process what was happening, trying to grasp the sheer audacity of her words. "You're joking," I said, though my voice sounded far weaker than I intended. Finally, she turned her head just enough to glance at me over her shoulder. Why would I be joking? And just like that, the reality crashed down on me like a tidal wave. She meant it. Every word. The woman I had built my life around, the one who once held my hand through life's storms, had just looked me in the eyes and told me she was going on a date. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. But I wasn't nothing. And I wasn't about to let her walk away from this moment thinking that I was. My heart pounded, not with anger, not with desperation, but with clarity. A sharp, undeniable clarity that told me everything I needed to know. "Go ahead," I said, my voice steady now. "But when you come back, don't bother using your key." For the first time that night, I saw it, the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. The smirk faltered, just for a split second. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. She had expected anger, maybe even desperation. Instead, all she got was my calm, measured words. "Go ahead. But when you come back, don't bother using your key." She blinked. The smirk that had been plastered on her face wavered for the first time. "Excuse me," she scoffed, shifting her weight onto one hip like I had just told her the most ridiculous thing in the world. I leaned back against the arm of the couch, keeping my expression unreadable. But inside, my world had cracked open, and something raw was seeping through. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was something else entirely, something cold, something final. She tilted her head, studying me, her confidence starting to crack. "You can't be serious." I exhaled, slow and steady, before standing up. "You expect me to sit here, knowing my wife is out on a date with another man, and be okay with it?" My voice was quiet, controlled, but every word was razor sharp. "I don't know what kind of man you think I am, but I can tell you this, I'm not that." She crossed her arms, but I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She had been so sure of herself a moment ago. So sure that I would either explode in anger or, worse, pathetically beg her to stay. But I wasn't playing that role. Not tonight. Not ever. "Look, I didn't mean it like that," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting." "Overreacting." I let out a humorless laugh. "Overreacting?" I repeated, shaking my head. "You just told your husband that you're going on a date. With another man. And you expect me to be, what? Supportive." She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. "Tell me something, Meredith," I said, watching as her expression darkened at the sound of her own name. She hated when I said it like that, firm, direct, as if I was speaking to someone I didn't recognize. "Is this a one-time thing? Or have you been doing this for a while?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. That hesitation, that half-second of silence, told me everything I needed to know. "Jesus," I muttered under my breath, raking a hand through my hair. The walls of my own home suddenly felt foreign, like I was standing in someone else's life, watching it all burn from a distance. She huffed, shifting her weight again. "It's not a big deal." That was it. That was the moment. Something inside me snapped, not with anger, but with clarity. Not a big deal. I took a slow step toward her, watching as she tensed just slightly. "Then let me make it easier for you," I said. "Go on your date, Meredith. Enjoy yourself. Just know that when you come back, you won't be my wife anymore." Her eyes widened. "You're being dramatic." I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. "And you're being single." The confidence she had walked into this conversation with, gone. The power she thought she had over me, crumbling. She had expected a fight. She had expected me to be the one to break. But I wasn't breaking. I was walking away. She swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her purse. For a moment, just a brief moment, I saw something flicker in her gaze. Fear. Not fear of me. No, nothing like that. Fear of losing control. And that's when I knew. She had never expected me to choose myself. I stepped back, crossing my arms. You should go. Your date's waiting. She didn't move. And that, right there, told me everything. She didn't leave. She stood there, gripping the strap of her purse so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The woman who had just moments ago confidently declared she was going on a date now looked as if she had suddenly stepped onto shaky ground. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The weight of my words was still lingering in the air, pressing down on her. Go on your date. Just know that when you come back, you won't be my wife anymore. I could see the gears turning in her head. She had expected defiance, anger, or even desperation from me. Instead, she was watching the foundation of her own arrogance crumble beneath her feet. She let out a sharp breath and forced a laugh. You're being ridiculous, she said, trying to regain control. I said nothing. Her eyes flicked to mine, searching for a reaction, a sign of doubt. Anything. She found nothing. I saw the slight falter in her stance, the way her confidence wavered as she shifted her weight. Then, in a desperate attempt to regain control, she smirked again. You're bluffing. Bluffing. That word settled in my chest like a stone at the bottom of a lake. I had given her an out. I had given her the chance to come to her senses, to realize the weight of what she had just said. But instead, she was doubling down. And that's when I knew. She never thought I'd actually let her go. I exhaled slowly, feeling the last remnants of whatever love I had left for her wither into something unrecognizable. I stepped toward her. She didn't move. Go. The word was simple, direct. A command, not a request. Her smirk faded. You're serious. I nodded once. Completely. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. For the first time, her certainty cracked, and I saw something behind her eyes. Hesitation. She had expected to leave me on hold, like a backup plan, a safety net she could crawl back to when she was done with her little adventure. But that safety net had just been cut. Her fingers twitched on her purse strap. You're really going to throw everything away over one date? I let out a slow breath, keeping my voice even. No, Meredith. I'm not throwing anything away. You did that the second you thought this was acceptable. She blinked, looking away for a moment. Her confidence was slipping, and she hated it. The seconds stretched, long and tense. Then, something changed. She doubled down. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and scoffed. Fine. She turned on her heel and stormed toward the door. I didn't stop her. I didn't call after her. I didn't beg. I simply watched as she reached for the doorknob, hesitated for just a fraction of a second, and then yanked it open. And just like that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there, staring at the empty space where she had just been, feeling the weight of reality settle onto my shoulders. This was it. She had left. And strangely, I didn't feel broken. I felt something else entirely. Something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. The silence was deafening. I stood there, staring at the closed door, half expecting her to burst back in with some last-minute excuse, some half-baked attempt at justifying what she had done. But the longer I stood there, the more the reality of it all sank in. She was gone, and I wasn't chasing after her. A strange calm settled over me, like a heavy fog rolling in after a storm. I had spent years, walking on eggshells around this marriage, trying to keep things together while she kept pulling away. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the phone she never let out of her sight. The signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. And now, I couldn't unsee them. I walked toward the living room, my movements slow and deliberate, as if I was stepping into a life I hadn't realized was mine to take back. The room felt different, like it wasn't just a place where she and I coexisted anymore. It was mine. I sank into the couch, my body heavy but my mind racing. I should have felt angry, maybe even devastated. But what I felt was something entirely unexpected, clarity. She had made her choice. And for the first time in a long time, I was about to make mine. I glanced at the framed wedding photo on the bookshelf. Us, smiling. Her hand on my chest. The illusion of happiness. I stood up, walked over, and pulled the frame down. It felt weighty in my hands, like I was holding a version of myself that no longer existed. A man who had believed in forever, who had ignored the warning signs, who had trusted her. A bitter chuckle escaped me. What an idiot. I turned the frame over, yanked off the back, and slid the photo out. It felt good, too good, to rip it in half, then into fourths, then into eighths. By the time I was done, there was nothing left of it but a pile of jagged edges. I let the pieces fall to the floor, a fitting metaphor for what my marriage had just become. And then, like an afterthought, I reached for my phone. My fingers hovered over her contact for a moment before I did something I should have done a long time ago. Block. Her name disappeared from my screen, swallowed by the void of irrelevance. I exhaled. Then, I did the same with her social media. The shared accounts. Every single tether she had to my life. Gone. There was no sadness. No hesitation. Just freedom. I didn't know where she had gone. I didn't care. But what I did know, what I had never been more certain of, was that when she walked out that door tonight, she didn't just go on a date. She walked out of my life. And I wasn't letting her back in. The night stretched on, quiet and unfamiliar. For the first time in years, I was alone in my own house, and it didn't feel suffocating. It felt peaceful. The tension that had lingered in the air for so long was gone, like a bad scent that had finally been aired out. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't grab a drink. I just sat there, absorbing the moment, letting the weight of what had happened settle in. I should have been a mess. I should have been pacing, replaying everything in my head, wondering what I did wrong. But I wasn't. I was just done. I glanced at the clock. 10:43 p.m. She was out there somewhere, with him. Laughing. Flirting. Probably touching him the way she used to touch me. A version of me, the old me, would have obsessed over that. Would have driven himself crazy picturing it. But the man sitting here now? He didn't care. Because she wasn't my problem anymore. The sound of my phone buzzing broke the silence. I frowned, picking it up. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something in my gut told me to answer. Hello. A pause. Then a voice I didn't recognize. Hey, is this Owen? My grip on the phone tightened. Who is this? The guy cleared his throat. He sounded nervous. Maybe even a little embarrassed. Look, man. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I thought you should know. I'm with Meredith right now. A cold, detached calm settled over me. Okay. That seemed to throw him off. Yeah. So, here's the thing. She's drunk. And crying. A lot. I blinked. Crying? She's saying she made a mistake, the guy continued. That she thought you'd freak out, beg her to stay, prove that you still wanted her. But you didn't. And now she's a mess. I leaned back, rubbing my jaw. Let me guess. She asked you to call me. A pause. Then, yeah, of course, she did. This wasn't about guilt. This wasn't about realizing she had screwed up. This was about control. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger. She thought she could shake me up, disappear for a few hours, and come back to a man desperate to fight for her. But that man didn't exist anymore. I exhaled slowly. Tell her something for me. Yeah, she made her choice. She can live with it. Silence. Then, a soft damn. I hung up. The second the call ended, a weight lifted from my chest. It was over. Truly over. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't living in a state of constant doubt, wondering if she loved me or if I was just convenient. She had shown me who she was, and I had finally listened. I tossed my phone onto the table, stood up, and stretched. Tomorrow, I'd start fresh. Tonight, I'd enjoy the silence. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, not because I was replaying memories of our so-called happy moments, but because for the first time in years, my mind wasn't fogged with uncertainty. There was no tightness in my chest, no waiting up to hear the front door creak open, no wondering if she was really out with friends. The house was mine again. I made coffee at 5 a.m., earlier than usual. Not out of necessity, but because I simply felt awake, like I had shed a weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. As the coffee brewed, I leaned against the counter, staring at my reflection in the microwave door. I looked different. Or maybe I just saw myself clearly for the first time in years. I had spent so much time trying to be a good husband. The reliable one. The provider. The man who forgave the little things, who overlooked the red flags because he believed in marriage, because he believed in her. And yet, last night, she walked out that door without a second thought. And when she realized I wasn't waiting for her to come back, She panicked. Her world was built on control, on the idea that no matter what she did, I would still be there, still hers. That was over now. The coffee machine beeped. I poured myself a cup and took it to the living room, settling onto the couch. The house felt empty, but not in a bad way. More like a space that had finally been aired out, freed from years of resentment and unspoken truths. And then Owen knocked at the door. I didn't move at first, just stared at it, my fingers tightening around my coffee mug. I already knew who it was. Another knock, more insistent this time. I sighed, setting the cup down. Might as well get this over with. I walked to the door and opened it. And there she was. Meredith stood on the porch, makeup smudged, her once perfect hair now a tangled mess. She reeked of alcohol and regret, her eyes slightly puffy from crying. She hadn't gone home. She had come straight here. Owen. She started, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. About what? She hesitated. About last night. I said nothing. Just watched her. She swallowed hard. I made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. You don't say. She exhaled sharply, looking away for a second. You don't understand, Owen. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I let out a humorless chuckle. You didn't mean for what, exactly? To tell your husband you were going on a date? To humiliate me in my own house? Or was it the part where you realized I wasn't going to beg you to stay? Her lips parted, but she didn't have an answer. Because she knew. She had pushed too far. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her squirm under the weight of it. She had spent years talking her way out of things, convincing me to give her one more chance, twisting situations so that I ended up being the one apologizing. Not this time. Finally, she spoke. I wasn't thinking straight, Owen. I don't know. I thought you'd fight for me. That did it. Something in me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I laughed. A real, deep, genuine laugh. Meredith frowned. Why are you laughing? I shook my head, the irony of it all finally hitting me. You thought I'd fight for you? I repeated, incredulous. Meredith, I've been fighting for you since the day I said, I do. And all this time, you've been pushing me away. You don't get to act shocked now that I've finally let go. Her face fell. She had no response to that, because she knew it was true. I straightened, dropping my arms to my sides. Look, Meredith, you wanted space? You got it. You wanted a fresh start? Well, congratulations, you're getting one. Just not with me. Her eyes widened. Owen, wait. No, I cut in, my voice firm. You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk out one night and come crawling back the next, expecting me to pick up the pieces. You made your bed. Now you can lie in it. She stepped closer, reaching for my hand. Please, I messed up. I don't want to lose you. I took a slow step back. Her fingers curled into a fist, grasping at nothing. I shook my head. You already did. Then, without another word, I closed the door. And this time, I locked it. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding. Not from sadness, not from regret, but from relief. I turned, walked back to the living room, and picked up my coffee. It had gone cold, but I didn't care. I took a sip anyway, savoring the moment. For the first time in years, I was free. The silence after I closed the door was heavier than before. Not suffocating, not unsettling, just final. I could still hear her outside, standing on the porch, shifting her weight from foot to foot. A part of me expected her to knock again, to yell, to demand that I open the door. But she didn't. She lingered. And then, after what felt like a full minute, I heard the soft sound of footsteps retreating down the steps. And just like that, she was gone. I let out a slow breath. My hands rested on the door for a second longer before I stepped back. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel at that moment, but what I didn't feel was doubt. No regret. No second-guessing. Just an overwhelming sense of relief. I walked back to the living room and dropped onto the couch. My coffee was stone cold, but I took a sip anyway, welcoming the bitterness of it. This was real. There was no fixing this. No working through it. No long, drawn-out fights or painful conversations about whether our marriage was salvageable. Because it wasn't. And, for the first time, I wasn't even upset about it. The weight of the last 7 years was peeling off of me layer by layer. The quiet in my house wasn't empty, it was liberating. The absence of her perfume wasn't sad, it was a cleansing. I had lost her, yes. But in doing so, I had found myself. And yet, something still lingered. A thought I couldn't shake. Not about her, but about me. How the hell did I let it get this far? I set the mug down and ran a hand over my face. It wasn't just about last night. It wasn't about her walking out that door. It was about every little moment before that. The tiny betrayals. The dismissive looks. The way she had slowly, piece by piece, rewritten our marriage into something unrecognizable. I thought back to when we first met. She was electric, full of life, always pulling me into her orbit with that effortless charm of hers. Back then, I had felt lucky to have her. Like I had won something that wasn't meant for me. And maybe that was the problem. I had never believed I was enough for her. I had spent our entire relationship trying to prove my worth. Trying to be the perfect husband, the provider, the one who did everything right so she wouldn't wake up one day and decide I wasn't good enough. And in doing that, I had handed her all the power. I had let her shape the rules of our marriage. Let her take me for granted. Let her convince me that love meant tolerating being disrespected. I breathed in deep and let it out slow. Never again. Never. Again. The past was done. There was no erasing it, no pretending I hadn't wasted years on a woman who never truly valued me. But the future? That was mine now. No more trying to be the man she wanted. No more bending. No more settling. I picked up my phone and, without hesitation, started clearing out everything. Old texts. Gone. Photos. Deleted. Our shared Spotify playlist? Unfollowed. I even changed my Netflix password. Let her use someone else's account. It was small, petty even, but it felt good. Like I was cutting the last frayed thread connecting me to the life I had just left behind. I stood up, stretched, and rolled my shoulders. Today was going to be different. Today was the start of something new. I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side of this. But for the first time in years, I was ready to find out. The next morning felt different. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds, a soft breeze filtering in from the open window. For the first time in years, I hadn't woken up feeling the familiar tension in my chest. No tight knots of anxiety, no unease about what kind of mood she'd be in, no checking my phone for texts that never came. Just peace. I sat up, stretched, and let out a slow breath. This is what freedom feels like. I knew that the hardest part wasn't last night, it was today. The moment when everything would feel real. The moment when I had to start moving forward. But for once, I wasn't afraid of it. I got up, made coffee, and sat in the kitchen, staring out the window as the morning traffic rolled by. A small sense of satisfaction settled in my chest. Meredith had walked out thinking she was leaving me in shambles. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was better off without her. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it and sighed. Meredith. She hadn't messaged since last night, but I knew she wouldn't let things go that easily. I picked up my phone and saw a single message. We need to talk. I stared at the words for a long moment before typing my response. There's nothing left to talk about. Then, without hesitation, I hit block. Just like that, it was over. There would be no long conversations, no second chances, no rehashing of what went wrong. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. And my choice was me. I finished my coffee, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I wasn't playing the role of the desperate husband, waiting for scraps of affection. I was finally free, and I was never looking back.